Mary was a peasant girl, somewhere between the ages of 12 and 16. We'll split the difference. We'll call her 14. She had friends and favorite foods and boy crushes and games she liked to play. She was 14, her whole life in front of her. One of the things she and her friends would giggle about when they were together is who they would end up marrying. Because in a culture of arranged marriages, one day they would be given away to somebody maybe they didn't know that well. Mary was feeling pretty good about it. She had been betrothed to a carpenter named Joseph, but the other girls, some of them still had to wonder, who would their parents strike a deal with? At least Mary was engaged to a Galilean boy. She wouldn't have to move away. She's about 14. Chores and meals and some free time to play, and daydreams and pimples and the awkwardness of living with a body that's changed into her adult self. She's about 14 and no different from any other barefoot peasant girl scurrying around Galilee. But now she finds herself in the middle of what is sure to be the region's biggest scandal ever. She's engaged to Joseph. He's got a stable job making furniture. He seems nice enough, but they're not yet married, and she's carrying a child. It's going to be the region's great scandal, but she knows the truth. The child within her is of holy origin, not a bad decision from a reckless teenager. She knows the truth. God has chosen her to carry and give birth to Israel's Messiah. And this truth is so overpowering, so beautiful, so remarkable that she just breaks into song. She can't help it. She sings out her joy. Magnificat is how the song begins in Latin. Magnifies. My soul magnifies the Lord. Today is Mary's song. My own mother was a big fan of musicals. She liked the feel-good escape of the Rodgers and Hammerstein kinds of things. We grew up in Doraville, not too far away, and for several seasons she had 2 tickets to the Fox Theater. And stealing away to the Fox to watch a musical was her all-time favorite way to restore. She took me a time or two, but one time when I was about 13, she took me to see Gene Kelly in Singing in the Rain, and she loved it. But since I was about 13, I couldn't admit that I loved it. I was too cool to love it. The truth is, I really did love it, but I couldn't tell any of the guys on my baseball team that I loved it. But Gene Kelly is on stage, bursting with love for Debbie Reynolds, and he jumps up on trash cans, he splashes in puddles, he sings, "What a glorious feeling, I'm happy again." There are just some experiences that are so grand, you just have to sing and dance. It's the only right response. You can't keep it in. You have to break into song. I think that's the reason that we associate Christmas with music. Because the birth of the Christ child is so beautiful, so meaningful, so life-changing that it soars past anything we can do with prose. We have to break into song. Hark the herald angels sing, glory to the newborn King. There are just some experiences that can't be contained. Mary's song, the Magnificat, signifies that something is alive inside of her that is so beautiful, she has to sing. But my mother loved musicals because they were a form of escape. She could set aside the demands and the worries of the week and escape into a world of song and romance and happy endings and bows and ovations. Mary's song is not an escape at all. It's part memoir, part courageous preaching. The song has grit and danger and realism and threat. There's some hard verses in this song. They don't all sound tingly Christmassy. Mary sings of the great things done by the Mighty One, and they include scattering the proud, bringing down the powerful, and sending the rich away empty. And none of those were themes of any musical at the Fox, ever. Let's not move past this too quickly. We can't just speed by and not look out that window and pretend we didn't see it. Because most of us in this room are the proud, the powerful, and the rich. If you earn more than $33,000 a year, you are in the top 1% of the world's income. And most of the people in this room are in the top half of Atlanta's income. So this song isn't good news for everybody. What's the Christmas message of hope for those who are the proud, the powerful, and the well-to-do? What are we supposed to do with Mary's song? I mean, the Buckhead Chamber of Commerce isn't using this as a part of their theme, their slogan for 2018. Welcome to Buckhead, Georgia's second highest income zip code. The Mighty One scatters the proud, brings down the powerful, sends the rich away empty. Welcome to Buckhead. Doesn't work. So what's the good news for us? How is this good news for the folks in this room? If you navigate the world in pride and power and affluence, this is not a hopeful story at all. But income is not the issue. The question is posture. Do we operate before God out of our power or out of a sense of vulnerability? To be fair, it's easier for a peasant girl to get in touch with her vulnerability, her fragile dependence on God. But we can all experience the Christmas miracle if we're able to be broken enough to hear it. God still whispers into the private chambers of those who are humble enough to hear. In the familiar King James Version, Mary's song begins, "My soul doth magnify the Lord, and my spirit hath rejoiced in God my Savior, for he hath regarded the low estate of his handmaiden." God has regarded her low estate. God comes for the weak and the vulnerable. The self-sufficient part of us that preens and swaggers is not the door where God enters. It's our lowliness and our brokenness. God enters into our lives by descending the rotten steps that lead to our basement. It's just that it's hard to lead that way. I've got a confession. I've confessed this in one-on-one conversations and in small groups. And there are other guys in the small groups who've nodded their understanding. They were with me, so I'm going to risk it here. I have somewhat of a James Bond complex. That is, I want to do everything well and never get my tie messed up. I mean, if James Bond needs to fly a helicopter, he knows how to do that. Speak Russian? Got it. Downhill skiing? Absolutely. Dance the foxtrot? He's in. Whatever. Melissa and I actually took dance lessons this year because I'm tired of going to weddings and not knowing how. I still need a lot of help. If somebody can help me, it would be welcome. But this is how we're conditioned to present ourselves to the world. Don't let them see you sweat. I'm in control. I've got this. But in the irony of the gospel story, our need for external smooth doesn't allow any place for God to do work on our internal mess. God scatters the proud, brings down the powerful, sends the rich away empty. But Mary gives us a model for how something new can be born in us too. And as she sits and ponders this miracle alive within her, the Virgin Mother says, "My spirit rejoices in God my Savior, for he has regarded the low estate of his servant, and it is in this vulnerable place where God whispers." It was true for Gertrude Behana. Probably not a familiar name to you. In 1971, a book was published by the author Elizabeth Burns entitled The Late Liz. Only Elizabeth was not really the author of the book. She wrote it under a synonym, the woman's real name, Gert Behana. Gert was the only daughter of a wealthy tycoon. Her dad was hostile to all religion, but he made plenty of money, and he provided for her really generously. Financially, she had everything she could want. She married her college sweetheart and ended up divorcing. She married 2 more times, divorced 2 more times. She had no moral grounding, no North Star, no church tradition to lean into. She had 2 sons, but she didn't have any clue about how to raise them. So they ended up in all kinds of trouble. She started drinking to deal with her stress, and that led to more stress, which led to more drinking. And finally, her life just became so completely unmanageable that she took an overdose of sleeping pills as a way to end her terrible agony. Well, 8 hours after her overdose, Gert woke in an ICU and had to face the fact that she was such a complete failure, she couldn't even succeed in ending her own life. A day earlier, she was so depressed that she took an overdose, and now, this next day, she's in even deeper despair. And friends came to check on her, but what do you say? And one of the friends finally risked it. And in the simplest way possible said, "Gert, have you ever considered asking God in your life to help you with all you're up against?" And she got angry. She said, "I don't even believe there's a God. I'm sick to death of all this religious talk. It's all just a crutch. You make God sound like some kind of bellhop, come carry your bags for you." And her friend, without getting defensive, just said, "You know, a crutch is a wonderful thing if you're crippled. And a bellhop's nice to have if you've got too much baggage to carry." Well, the conversation ended there. The friend went home. Nighttime came, dark in the room, and Gert finally said out loud, "God, I don't even know whether you exist. I've never had anything to do with you, but if you do exist and you can help me, please, please come. I am absolutely at the end of my rope." And in the book, she reported that at that moment, a warm light started to move over her. and it enveloped her in a sense of love she had never experienced before. She had an overwhelming sense that her life now mattered, that there was some meaningful future in spite of her horrible past. And she said that this sense of embrace lasted for several minutes, and then it started to pass. And even though it was the middle of the night, she picked up the phone, called her business manager, and said, "Bring me a copy of the Holy Bible as quickly as you can." And he said, "My God, Gert, what has happened to you?" And she said, "My God has happened to me." Even though Mary's song is not good news for the proud and the powerful and the rich, it's a matter of posture. Because Gert was plenty rich and plenty powerful. She was just broken enough to let God find some toehold in her life. And God still whispers into the private chambers of those who are humble enough to hear. Now, some of you in the room, Christmas might just be like the Publix commercial. What you're looking forward to in the next 24 hours, 48 hours is just fine china and Christmas ham. Nieces and nephews, well-behaved, wearing sweaters from the Gap. Bing Crosby and perfect presents and mistletoe and easy laughter with family we love. It's the happiest season of all. But some in the room might not be feeling it at all. Like Gert, life has piled on heartache after heartache. Or like the Virgin Mary, life has just handed you a major life-changing disruption. Well, I have good news for you too. God still whispers into the private chambers of those who are humble enough to hear. My spirit rejoices in God my Savior, for he has regarded the low estate of his servant. If you will open your life to God's help, God will heal you. In the heart of the humble, God has room to make miracles happen. Thanks be to God. Let's stand and sing our joy.